Tens of millions of visitors come to Orlando every year, attracted by the combination of thrills and indulgence. Yet, within an hour of the city, there's all kinds of wonders, natural and man-made. You can sit by the river watching horses go by and reflecting that this is a place of great beauty and tranquility as well as excitement. Central Florida might strike you as theme parks embroidered by highways, but the reality is a patchwork of lakes and rivers that put you in touch with Mother Nature and her offspring. At Wild Florida, you can experience the wilderness safely and speedily aboard an airboat. Here's co-owner Sam Hort.
The waterways, the marshes, the swamps, the wetlands that used to be all throughout the heavily populated areas of Central Florida still exist. You got to get about 45 minutes outside of Disney and all the other areas, and you can see what it used to look like 1,000 years ago. They are the best transportation for getting around the swamp because they have a flat bottom and no motor hanging down below the water, and so they're able to glide across all the terrain that we have here in our swamps.
A stubborn, thick-skinned survivor from a distant age that has somehow endured into the 21st century. No, not me, the alligator, Florida's original resident. This airboat adventure connects you with the natural world and reminds you who's in charge. You skim across the headwaters of the Florida Everglades through pristine marshland largely unscathed by humanity, with water, land and sky providing superb vistas into the past. From water to wheels. Just 20 minutes from Orlando's International Drive along Florida's Turnpike takes you to the start of the West Orange Trail. Good morning, how are you doing? Very good, beautiful bikes. The 22-mile track, which follows the old railroad line, begins at Killarney Station, where Gary Langolier of West Orange Trail Bikes and Blades set me up for the ride.
It's got a lot of just beautiful nature, and between here and Winter Garden, it's probably the most beautiful part of the trail. Winter Garden, if you're going straight, a casual ride is probably 45 minutes. If you stop off, then however long you want to spend along the trail.
Good morning. Morning. The West Orange Trail is part of America's Rail Trail Network, a web of paths created from former railroad tracks. This particular line used to connect all the citrus plantations, and being an old railway line means it's flat, it's away from traffic, and it winds through some wonderful backwaters. Just pausing here at the Oakland Nature Preserve to take a 10-minute stroll down to Lake Apopka. The healthy West Orange Boardwalk, as it's officially known, provides a perfect trail to the shore of Lake Apopka. At first sight, this looks like ancient wilderness at its most accessible and alluring, but what you're seeing is the result of heroic efforts by concerned citizens to restore the original ecology after a series of environmental calamities harmed the lake. Good work, team. And at the end of the ride, your reward is the chance to replenish in the lovely town of Winter Garden, and in particular, Plant Street Market. Here at the Axum Roastery, they roast their own beans on the premises, and a slice of the profit goes to charity. Good coffee, good causes. At Plant Street Market, they don't just roast their own coffee, they brew their own beer. In its heyday, Winter Garden was the largest citrus shipping point in the United States along the Tavares and Gulf line, or T&G for short, and known locally as the Tug and Grunt. Of course, fruit growing is alive and well in Central Florida. I didn't want to feel like a lemon, so for this segment I've squeezed in a trip to a family-run farm. This is Ridge Island Groves. It's always good to go direct to the source, and here you can pick your own fresh fruit direct from the trees, as well as see the work that goes on behind the scenes at the packing house. Kelly Rote of Visit Central Florida told me the first Spanish settlers started the Sunshine State's citrus success.
Between citrus and cattle, those are the two largest industries, and both were basically brought here by the Spaniards in the early days of Florida. Right after they landed in St. Augustine and started spreading out through Florida, they brought citrus and they brought cattle. But there's still acres and acres of land like this out in Central Florida, especially because we have a lot of rural agricultural lands here. We actually consider ourselves Florida's sweetest spot because we're right in the sweet spot, the heart of the state, and we have sweet gems like the citrus. And the tourism industry, we're neighbors of Mickey Mouse, so we have tons of tourists that come every year, and folks come to enjoy the weather and the citrus and just all the different things like that Florida has to offer.
They even make their own orange ice cream. Running through the centre of the Sunshine State is the mighty Mid-Florida Ridge, also known as the Lake Wales Ridge. While it's not quite a rival for the Andes or the Himalayas, the 150-mile-long Sand Ridge stands out from the rest of the peninsula. I'm heading for one of its highest points, Iron Mountain, almost 300 feet above the Gulf and Atlantic shores, and location for one of Central Florida's most spectacular sights. Bok Tower is the creation of Edward W. Bok, a Dutch immigrant who created a gorgeous garden with 1,000 varieties of plants, all beneath a dramatic marble edifice that soars a further 205 feet, making it visible for many miles. Make the world a bit better or more beautiful because you have been in it. That is the lovely motto that Edward Bok's grandmother told him, and goodness me, he took it to heart, creating this serene, lovely garden with, at its heart, a tower that sings. Thanks to the dozens of bells cast in the English town of Loughborough and installed in the tower as a carillon. On many days there are live carillon concerts by Bok Tower's own award-winning musician Geert de Hollander.
I'm the carillonneur of Bok Tower Gardens. This is a very large instrument. It has 60 bells and the total weight is more than 60 tons. It's almost like an orchestra. You can do anything from Bach and Mozart again to Lady Gaga and everything in between, I guess. But you use your fists because it's too heavy to play. So every key is connected with a wire going through my roof to the inside of the bell where the clapper is. And the clapper is in position, it's really close to the bell. And so what I do, I strike a note, and then at the same time the clapper inside moves. So the bells are stationary. It's only the clapper on the inside that moves and hits the bell. And that's how I produce sound. And you can play very, very soft and you can play really loud too. I think I have the best job in the world. I'm not planning on retiring. They'll have to drag me out of the tower.
All these locations are close enough to Orlando for day trips, but there's also the chance to experience the wilderness with an overnight stay at Westgate River Ranch Resort and Rodeo. You can go horseback riding, sharpen up your archery skills and watch the weekly rodeo. But this is also a working ranch raising cattle under the leadership of the very hard-working Ray Duncan. I've just checked, we are 1,600 miles from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Surely that's cowboy country.
Well, that's a little mistake in the history of the American cowboy, because if you look at it, you're going to find out that the first American cowboys actually started in Florida. The very ground that we're standing on, they would come through here on their way to the east or the west coast to meet the Spanish ships that were coming out of Puerto Rico and Cuba. And they were actually capturing the wild cattle that had been left behind for many years by the Spanish explorers. So they found they could travel into the woods, catch those wild cattle, meet the ships coming in, and it became a way of life. Even before Ponce de Leon ever went west of the Mississippi and discovered a place called Wyoming.
Doctor, I think I'm a teepee and a wigwam. The trouble with you is you're 2 tents. I'm here all week. This is camping, but not as I know it. The height of luxury under canvas, and you can even bring the family. Even the most glamorous tent doesn't necessarily come with its own facilities, but there's a bathhouse around the back. The cowboy riff resounds throughout the ranch, which has its very own smokehouse grill. A dinner fit for a cowboy at the Smokehouse Grill. You can find the Wild West in America's deep southeast and discover your inner cowboy or girl. The Sunshine State's past is in evidence here. The Florida Trail, a scenic path that follows the old cattle driving trails, traverses Westgate River Ranch, though today you're unlikely to be woken by a rumble of marching livestock. And part of the deal is that you get your breakfast delivered in the morning. Thank you. Wherever you are in Florida, the sea is never far away. And in less than an hour from downtown Orlando, you can reach the Atlantic Ocean here at Cocoa Beach, part of the Space Coast. Cocoa Beach is a great place to learn to glide across the waves, as champion surfer Lauren McLean told me.
Cocoa Beach, we have a sand bottom, so we don't have any rock or reef you have to worry about, so that's very favorable. We have very consistent surf all year round, and it's best to learn because we don't typically have a lot of large surf. So it's real favorable for first-time surfers to come and feel real comfortable and get the gist and the feeling and catching their first wave. The Space Force is located right here in Central Florida. We have a great view of all the observation towers out back, and we see launches all the time from here. Doesn't matter where you are in Cocoa Beach, you know when that launch is, you look up, you see that rocket right up into space.
Whether you're a surfer, an astronaut or a holidaymaker, you'll need sustenance, and the surf vibe continues at the Oceanside restaurants. Welcome to the Sandbar Sports Grill. Always take local advice. Well, that's exactly what I did, and they said you've got to go to Q's Cracking Crab and Seafood Kitchen. Q is the creator, Kenesha Breadwood. Talking to her, I sensed this award-winning family-friendly concept could take off.
It came about just as a hobby that I did. I used to cook for family and friends. I had game night at my house and enjoyed that. I started selling a few of the dinners just to see, because everybody liked the food, and ended up just kind of going and creating a life of its own, you know. I know it sounds cliche, but it's made with love. We have one of the customers just came from North Carolina to try our food for the first time tonight, and he said it's like home style cooking with a flair. And basically it's the same thing, you know. It's home style cooking with love, and I call it soulful seafood.
I've got the giant fish platter, astronaut sized portion. Accommodation is readily available on the Space Coast. As you might expect from a hotel on the Space Coast, there's plenty of space here at the Courtyard by Marriott. All the big chains are present here, which means that you're going to get a great deal on facilities and price, complete with a balcony and a view of the pool. And now, as they say, for something completely different. This is Casa Coquina, which has a majestic view across to the NASA facility and also some intriguing rooms. Come and have a look. All the rooms are named after precious gems. This is emerald. The Sunshine State reaches a spectacular eastward conclusion at Merritt Island, a 35-mile-long barrier isle that includes a national wildlife refuge. In the early 1960s, after President Kennedy said he wanted an American on the moon by the end of the decade, NASA took over Merritt Island. A naturalist, Alan Cruikshank, campaigned for much of the island to be preserved, and it's now a national wildlife refuge, complete with the Black Point Wildlife Drive, which takes you along the levee through the wetlands with an abundance of life. This is the complete opposite of a safari park game drive. You can get out wherever you like and take pictures and get really close to the wildlife. Ornithologists and photographers from across the nation converge on Merritt Island to see birdlife such as the roseate spoonbill.
Anytime I'm out in nature is always good, so I just love, all of the area, but driving through here and being able to stop and get out and spend as much time as you want when there's action happening, then, that makes it worth it. Every time I've come, it's different because the water levels are different, the timing is slightly different, the weather, so you just never know what you're going to see,
You can find a vast array of wintering waterfowl and manatees in the springtime, plus a pervading sense of tranquility, occasionally interrupted with a reminder that this is humanity's main connection with the cosmos. Is the Kennedy Space Center the most exciting place on the planet? Central Florida's Atlantic coast provides the fast track to the universe beyond. Between July 1969 and December 1972, the Apollo program made walking on the moon seem almost as routine as walking into Walmart. And in the 21st century, Cape Canaveral has never been busier. The Kennedy Space Center deftly combines the twin roles of theme park and museum of cosmological adventures. It's fantastic seeing the hardware that helped man take that giant leap into the future. Of course, I reached the Kennedy Space Center using satellite navigation. So how did they all get up there then? Well, this is where you learn the story of space and get a glimpse into the future. Right now, I've got an appointment with an astronaut. Bruce Melnick took part in 2 space shuttle missions, including the maiden voyage of Endeavour in 1992. I met him beside Atlantis in a building constructed around the last of the shuttles to return from space.
There's a very scientific and physical reason it's here. First of all, when you launch from the Earth, you immediately pick up the speed of the Earth's rotation. So if you want to get to orbit quicker, you want to be going as fast as you can. So here at 28 degrees north latitude, we're moving about 1,000 miles an hour, 900 to 1,000 miles an hour to the east. So when we launch, we take off to the east and we've already got 1,000 miles an hour at our back. Second thing is, if you launch, back in the early days of rocketry, we had quite a few failures. And so therefore if you're going to have a failure and a bad day, you'd like to have that happen over the water where it's an unpopulated area. But when we light off those main engines, the shuttle is held to the pad by the 2 solid rocket boosters. So the main engines, which are offset from the boosters, actually bend those rockets, and you feel a sway. You move about 10 feet up in the cockpit of the shuttle when you're on that stack. When the main engines ignite, NASA's got a real technical term for that. They call it twang. So when you twang over, and when you get to T0, that's when the solid rocket boosters ignite. and it is loud, it's rough, it's a big bang when the 8 explosive bolts let go, and off you go, rocketing into space. It looks like a slow ascent when you take off, but we're already going 100 miles an hour when we clear the top of the tower. I mean, it's a real kick in the pants. And what's really cool is you outrun the speed of sound very quickly, so all that noise goes away pretty quick, all that rocket noise, but now you hear the air rushing down the outside of the shuttle on those rough blankets and tiles. You can hear it sounds like a train howling through a tunnel. And then very quickly you get up high enough to where the air is so thin, you don't hear that anymore. And so for the last 15, 20 seconds or so of first stage, it's just a real rough ride. Then you come to SRB separation, solid rocket booster separation, call it staging. Solid rocket boosters let go, and now you continue on up to orbit using the remaining fuel in the external tank. It's quiet, it's smooth, a lot of the astronauts call it electric drive. But now's when the G's start to build up, and you're being pushed back in your seat, and the G's build to 3 G's, and then we throttle the engines back because we don't want to exceed 3 G's. So now you weigh 3 times what you weigh on Earth. Because of being a winged vehicle, the wings would probably come off at about 3.5 G's, and that would make for a real bad day. So you're pushed back into your seat, and 8.5 minutes after you take off, you run out of fuel, and we come to what's called MECO, main engine cutoff. So you're pushed back in your seat, it's a little bit hard to breathe, a little hard to talk, and then MECO, poof, instantaneously 0 G. You're free floating, it's quiet, it's smooth. You don't even feel like you're moving, but you're traveling at over 17,500 miles an hour. I like to characterize it, it's almost 5 miles a second. A common rifle bullet travels at about 2,500 feet per second, but when we were flying this shuttle, we were traveling at over 25,000 feet per second. We're 10 times faster than a rifle bullet, and you don't even feel like you're moving. It's awesome.
Atlantis ended her final mission in 2011 after 3 decades of the space shuttle being the workhorse of NASA, keeping America connected with the cosmos. Now it's the turn of the next generation. At sundown, one of my favourite locations on the Space Coast is Kennedy Point Park in Titusville. You can see the people out fishing, hear the water lapping. It's lovely. But tonight, I've got a bit of company.
Hey, hi! It's a great night.
You're missing out.
0 and liftoff.
Tonight, Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket is launching dozens of satellites from Cape Canaveral. For about the first minute, you can just see this dazzle in the sky, and then the rumble arrives, and yes, the Earth is moving. Here it is again, filmed from our time-lapse camera, and remember, all these astronomical adventures are beginning beside a stunning Florida coastline. I love the way that humanity coexists with the natural world in this part of Florida. I met plenty of terrific people, but I've also seen a good share of wonders, and I understand a lot more about the scale of the place, looking out across thousands of miles of ocean and gazing into the heavens. This is where you get a real sense of space.